this was brought up in Sheryl Sandberg's book as well, is when she went to her boss and lobbied for pregnancy parking. Because she was like, why am I trotting from across the parking lot when I should be getting a slot right up in the front? And so to that point, we need to lobby as women collectively, and we need to think outside the box when we're asking for things.
Yes, I'm going to really do my best to like reel it back and not get on my soapbox tonight. I get very passionate about this. I've seen personally in my professional work that when women get together and they support each other, miracles happen and change happens very quickly. And I loved Sheryl Sandberg's book. I love that it's stirring up, fury and anger. I wish women could support each other more instead of like attack and see it as if I choose this and you choose that, we have to be mortal enemies, because I don't think that's the case. And I think more and more there are groups of like-minded women happening around the globe like this. However, she makes a good point that this women's revolution that was started by our mother's generation has really stalled. And I don't remember who the feminist was in her book that she quoted at a college graduation saying, we were all about choices, our generation. We just didn't think so many of you would choose to stay at home. And, this idea of leaning in and, I think we're still the majority sex in this country. I believe the last time I checked the statistics, it was 51 or 52% of the population in this country. And when you go to the Senate, I know a couple years ago we were at 18% represented in the Senate. So how do we make changes in the greatest country in the world for women, all the things we need to really take leadership and finally make this even, when none of our voices are heard in our government? And so she brings up really great questions. And I think we don't have to argue all the reasons why we can't. I'm living it right now. I applaud Sheryl Sandberg for her career. It doesn't work for me. I couldn't run my life that way. And yet that's what works beautifully for her. And as a woman and as a sister to sister, I honor that. But I do think we have to find a way to step up, and that's what itches me to get back to my work. And I have a great partner. My husband is as hands-on as they get. Ask anyone that knows him. I mean, he's amazing from day one. I mean, if he could have nursed my daughter, he would have. He's great. But it's health. It goes back to health, and it goes back to, I love that part in the book, which is why I brought it up with you when we spoke, because here she is, the top of Google. Was it Google at the time or Yahoo? Yeah. Google. Okay. And she's running to a meeting, 8 months pregnant, because there's no parking, and she says to Sergey, as he's sitting in his Zen yoga position in his office, we need pregnancy parking. And he said, that's a great idea. He didn't think of it, because why would he think of it? He's a guy. We're pregnant. So why don't we love ourselves enough that we collectively start talking about what we need, and we collectively start to go to the government and go to the CEOs and go where people have places of power and say, this is what we need, hands down. And when we collectively start doing this, everything's going to change like that. Nothing, I believe, is changing because we're not collectively doing it. And I can just tell one last story. When I worked for 10 years with hundreds of women, one thing that drove me batty all the time was women would come to me and complain about how a male counterpart came in later, worked there shorter, got raised and whatever. And I said, did you ask for anything? When you took your job, did you get it in writing? It's 6 months, you'd have a review. Well, no, but he did. Did you, when they said, what are you looking to make? I always say to women, you say, what is the position offering? Because if you throw out a number, statistically, women lowball themselves. So we do everything to set ourselves up to fail. Now, it's not our fault. We've been in the workforce way less than men have. But we need to kind of pick up that learning curve, and we need to start with, and it goes back to the first point, to bring the night, full circle, be kind to yourself. You matter. We all matter. And, I don't practice a perfect application of this. I want you to know. I'm not sitting up here, I do this every day. No, I'm well aware. It's a challenge. We're not conditioned this way. And, we haven't had generations and generations of our mothers and our grandmothers in the workforce, wearing the pants and running the companies. So we have to learn. But I think if we keep doing more of this and coming up with solutions and collectively asking, things are going to change.
And you bring up a point that Akanksha, I think you had sent me an article, and many of you probably read it. It's called The Opt-Out Generation. It was published in the New York Times, that so many of us have these options and many have opted out. And then 10 years later deciding, hey, I want to come back to the workforce. And I want to bring this up because, Shobha, you have a lot of women that are now the primary breadwinners of their families. And they're like, you know what? It's expected of me that I'm going to stay home. And you actually advise them otherwise, because it goes back to your point about investing in your career.
They are the primary breadwinners, and the majority of the company and the salons are South Asian. So there's an expectation that they also should be the primary caretaker for their children, for their in-laws, and usually they're living with either their parents or their in-laws. And so there's an expectation that if there's a religious holiday, that they're celebrating it in exactly the way they're supposed to be according to the religion. And so there's just a lot of expectations about their obligations in the family. And what's interesting is they have become sometimes the only breadwinner. And so it becomes a problem from a company perspective, because we have to give off, and there's a lot of vacation time, and there's a lot of calling last minute because their kids get sick and all of these things. And so one of the things that, so their life revolves around everyone else's lives. But they also are the main person that should really be taken care of by everyone, because they are financially taking care of everyone also. And they're the last ones to be taken care of, and they don't ask for it. And what I've noticed in the evolution of our company is that they are starting to take care of themselves. And it's because I think they are asking for it. They're tired when they get home or whatever it may be. Other people are cooking or whatever it may be. And we did start that, even myself. In our company, I would notice that if they needed to leave a bad situation, all the money they made went towards the family and not for themselves. So we started talking about, just setting up savings accounts for them to be able to put some of their money in. And then instead of giving bonuses, we set up 401k retirement plans and said, okay, if the company does really well, if you put money towards your retirement, because as most people know the statistics, women tend to live longer, but we tend to use most of our resources towards our family and not for ourselves. So if you put money towards that, then we will put money towards that, instead of giving bonus or cash to your hands, because that will just go towards the family. So those are some of the practices that we started implementing in our company and started actually talking about it, which then made themselves advocate for themselves.